couch, I'm ready to play fantasy. I know I turned 2 in a day, but the lace isn't hot in my veins. I can turn 2 in every way, so I turn to YouTube today and smash play. I'm prepared to listen. The X-Fippin' whip got me looking way past the pitches. Statistics all that I know, and I know that who is on first, you can say I'm ready to go. I ain't trying to steal second or third, cause I wanna win first. How am I to put all of these numbers to words? I know the terms from A to Z, it's like a gift and a curse. I know the difference between a splitter and a curve, but if I can't put it into points, man, then what's it worth? I need the truth, I need knowledge. Found this podcast with all of it, but what they call it? Turn 2. Turn 2, what it do? Win leagues, catch out. Peace.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Turn 2 podcast brought to you by rotofanatic.com. We are here live Wednesday night. We have a special group with us. We're going to continue on our divisional series, going over and underrated hitters, pitchers, and some late round targets. I'm your host, Matt Williams. You can find me on Twitter at MATTWI77IAMS. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Brian Seymour, in his St. Louis Cardinals outfit as we are doing the NL Central. Brian, what is up?
Doing good, Matt. In the middle of 3 different NFBC DCs right now, so having a lot of fun, excited for the season, and super pumped to talk some NL Central with some other NL Central guests tonight. So my favorite division, a lot of pitching, obviously, in this division, a lot of defense. So yeah, I'm ready to go.
All right, we do have, like I said, a couple of very special guests here tonight. You can join us live on Twitch, YouTube, wherever, if you want to jump in the comments and talk to us. But our first guest, complete badass and fantasy baseball player. She just got picked up over at Fantrax. So very special congratulations to her jumping in. She is in the FTN draft guide as well. If you want to go check out their draft kit, she has some great stuff in there. Mrs. Jneyy Butler. What is up, Jneyy?
I'm good. How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Representing the Reds. Now,
I am.
In your profile, proud defender of Skyline Chili, which I believe everyone knows what that is for now, but would you kind of like to explain what that is?
Skyline Chili is chili on top of spaghetti with, you can choose to have onions or beans and a whole pile of cheese on top. And I will defend it to the death. Everybody immediately has a very adverse reaction to that, to describing that combination. But what I will say is that you can't think of it as chili. Think of it as, it's not spiced like normal chili. So it has like what I would describe as sort of a jerk seasoning taste to it. So it's more like a spaghetti sauce because it's very saucy. So it's like spaghetti sauce on spaghetti with cheese on it and onions, and it's delicious. And if you don't want it on spaghetti, you can get it on a coney. I urge everyone to have it at least once in their life.
I tell everybody, it's like, you eat bolognese on spaghetti and you put Parmesan cheese. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. It's something different. And there's a bunch of cheddar cheese. What's not to love? Joining us also is someone who probably needs no introduction, but for anyone listening on the podcast, you have no idea because you cannot see him. He's over at The Athletic on Rates and Barrels. He's the smooth, velvety voice of fantasy baseball. DVR, Mr. Derek Van Riper. Welcome to the show, representing the Brewers.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. The funny thing was when you said badass before you introduced Jneyy, I knew you were going to introduce Jneyy and not me. So it was a great way to start that because immediately I was like, all right, I got a minute here. But Skyline is something I have not had. Even I do make my own Cincinnati chili. There's actually a pretty good recipe I found a while back. I like it. I'm not a hater. I would be skeptical just in general of fast food chili as an overall concept, but I'm not here to fight back on the idea that Cincinnati chili is not chili. It is absolutely chili.
It is a sit-down restaurant, but it's more like a diner. It's not like a place where you're going to get a beer, but you do sit. The best way to have it is to sit down and have it. I think that some of them have drive-thrus, but don't do that.
Drive-thru chili.
All right, so everybody, go out there. If you're ever in Cincinnati, give it a try, or make it at home. I guess it's not the most complicated.
All over Ohio, I think Indiana, Kentucky, it's there.
All right, so the point of the episode, everyone. Last week we did the NL East with Peter Pratt and Chris Clegg, and we're going to go around person by person. We're going to go over overrated hitters, underrated hitters, pitchers, and our favorite targets, all in division for the NL Central. Not everyone is just representing their own teams. We're just kind of going round robin. It can be wherever. So starting with our guests, like always, we're going to start with our underrated hitter, and we're going to go ahead and start off with Derek. Who do you have as your most underrated hitter right now in fantasy for the National League Central?
I want to go with Jesse Winker. I guess it just means that I believe that there's still one more level that he can reach. I know our friend Vlad Sedler has made a bit of an annual tradition out of writing up a who's the next Christian Yelich sort of piece. And I would say that if you're trying to find someone who could do something similar without the stolen bases, I think Winker has that profile. There's a ton of hard contact. I think if we get a full season of health, which has been a problem for him going back to his time as a prospect in the Red system, there's a shot at 35 to 40 home runs. The park helps, but he's not merely a byproduct of Great American Ballpark. It's power to all fields. It's a low K rate. Obviously, a guy that's controlled the zone for a long time. Yes, the only thing he doesn't do is steal bases, but I think he's an early round bat who falls kind of into that pick 100 range on a regular basis. So I'm happy to take him in that spot as long as I've got enough speed in my foundation up to that point. And I think the run environment only helps. I think this is a team that's going to score plenty of runs, so the runs and RBIs are going to be there. And I think he also has a reputation from earlier in his career as a guy that plays less against lefties than he actually does. If you look at the game logs from last season, he rarely got days off when he was healthy. So he's not just a big side platoon guy anymore. You're getting average. You're getting everything else except for steals. So Jesse Winker, for me, if not the most underrated hitter in the NL Central, absolutely in the conversation.
And right now, at least in early ADP among drafts of all the degenerates like me who are already drafting teams, he's kind of like in that bridge area. You have all the early studs, and then you kind of get into the weird Cody Bellinger, Yelich, Stanton, like we're not sure they're injured kind of thing. And then Winker's kind of right there. And then you jump into the very next tier when you get into the Grishams, the Clinic, the Schwarbers and stuff. So he's kind of like, in that area where I think people are just hedging, whether they believe in him or they're not sure about the injury. So Jneyy, since you are the Reds fan here, what are your thoughts on Jesse Winker? As far as taking your team cap off, how do you feel from a fantasy perspective?
I love his skill set. I mean, that's unquestioned. I do worry about injuries. He does seem to get nicked up a lot. I was thinking to myself, okay, what about platoon? But you kind of already answered that. He does have a pretty good split, righties and lefties. So it's possible that if they have a situation where somebody could step in against lefties, that they could give him, especially if he is dinged up, give him some rest days in there. But if it's kept to a minimum, I think that he's a really good buy there. And, like the group that you just described, I like him a lot better than some of the big risks that you've got with some of those other guys.
All right, Brian, how about you? I know you like to, especially you're playing in a lot of best balls and the draft champions where you don't have fab leagues. You're someone that maybe is a little more wary of injuries because you can't replace him off the waiver wire or anything. So where do you fall on a guy like Winker?
I actually have him off my board just because of the injury history. And I totally agree with DVR. Like the skills are there. I could see him hitting 35 home runs if he can let the big question, like DVR said, like just putting it together and actually staying healthy, which I would love to see. I had him on a few teams last year and it just, obviously the power is there, but just not staying on the field. And Matt, you're right. With where he's going in ADP, there is this like big kind of question mark section. And it's funny because we mentioned Yelich. He's going 7 picks behind him. I have the last 3 weeks of NFBC ADP up just to qualify that. But yeah, going at 111. And then, talk about similarities. You've got Mitch Haniger going about 10 picks after that. Similar profiles like Jared Walsh after it as well. So I agree with you. I think that he is a little bit in no man's land and people don't know what to do. But we're all dreaming on that 30, 35, 40 home run season and a great ballpark to do it. So I'm worried about the injuries. I can replace outfielders with power if I need to. So it's going to be a hard pass for me, but definitely could see him doing that.
All right. Heading over to Jneyy after we talk about Winker. Who's your underrated hitter? So right now we went over Jesse Winker just now. Your underrated hitter for the National League Central.
My underrated hitter is Rowdy Tellez. And I went much deeper as far as underrated goes. But he his underlying numbers for years, if you look at, the base power stats, he's always right up there, with the max EV and the, home runs. He's got all the numbers to make him a good home run hitter. He just hasn't had consistent playing time. And he wasn't getting out of Toronto, goes to Milwaukee. He was kind of splitting time with Vogelbach. So Vogelbach's still there. So there is a chance that will happen. But he really doesn't have a strong lefty-righty split. Roster Resource has him platooned. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. So if he gets full playing time, I think you could be getting one of the best power hitters in baseball. And Milwaukee just re-signed him for 2022, so they have a reason to play him. He's got a good K rate, which I always like. Anytime you can get a power hitter with a good K rate, and I think that he can give you an average that won't hurt you. His XBA in 2021 was 263, which is great in this environment. And he just needs to up his fly ball rate a little bit, and you could really be getting a ton of home runs from him.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of made it official when they let the big robot Daniel Vogelbach go. Derek, what are your thoughts as a Brewers fan? Are you pretty excited about this? Because I know everyone was waited. He was in purgatory in Toronto. Now he finally looks like he finally has a shot to run away with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we have a good barreler, a guy that doesn't strike out a lot. Obviously, Rowdy Tellez is a large human. He does not run well, but that's fine. Like he does enough damage that he's going to get away with some of his flaws. Even with that dead pull sort of approach that he has, for the most part, he doesn't go the other way sometimes. A lot of that power comes to the pull side. He's probably not going to hurt you as much in batting average as other cheap first base mashers will. I think Jney's right. There's a path to closer to everyday playing time. If you told me that Rowdy Tellez is going to put together a season similar to 2017, 2018 Travis Shaw, which is kind of a 240, 250 average with 30 bombs, like that's not out of the question. He doesn't even have to do that to make value where he's going. And I realize in a normal range of outcomes, losing playing time to lefties exists, but you can take that chance where he's going. So I think that's a great call. I don't think I'm just drinking the Brewers Kool-Aid. If they surprise us and make a trade to upgrade first base, he'd probably be going back the other way. I mean, if you imagine a Matt Olson to Milwaukee trade, the A's are going to want someone that can play at first base every day. So Tellez would get to play a lot somewhere else because they probably wouldn't keep him on the roster if they got someone they were going to play there every single day. So a really nice late option.
Please don't send Rowdy to Oakland or Vegas or wherever they're trying to get to, or what their current plan is. He's going so late. I mean, Brian, what do you think? I mean, right now he's going as like the 33rd first baseman, and he's basically almost the last in a line of people that you can really hope for something special out of. There's a couple afterwards that could get some everyday at bats. Bobby Bradley has a ton of risk at first. The batting average could certainly kick him out. Carlos Santana is certainly one, but after that, it's just a bunch of guesses. He's going well after guys like Luke Voigt, Miguel Sano, Bobby Dalbec, everyone like that, and a little bit after Jesus Aguilar. It looks like a good spot, but are you willing to kind of roll the dice on him as like your starting corner infielder, or is he more of a bench bat for you?
Not necessarily willing to put him in the starting lineup, but just kind of the way that I do things in these DCs. I usually, if I'm going to get him, I'm going to get him as maybe my third first baseman. And Jneyy, actually, I think you said that, you went pretty deep on this. I think this is the right way to go because this is his ADP has, I don't want to say skyrocketed, but being in these DCs, which I've been in consistently since I think November 27th was the first one I entered. He's kind of moved up from that 350 area to now he's at 316 over the last 3 weeks in the NFBC. So people are realizing it. I think you're right. I don't think this guy ends up in a platoon situation. I don't know. DVR could probably speak to this. I don't know what they're expecting of Keston Hiura or if there's any real expectation. I don't know why there would be much, but yeah, Rowdy Tellez. I think we're probably going to see, as we get closer to that main event territory, we're probably going to see him going before pick 300. Matt, I think you nailed it. There's not a lot of people going after him that you can, as you said, accept something or expect something special out of. You've got guys like Eric Hosmer, which I expect nothing spectacular out of, but he plays. So you've got a little of that. But as far as like, I think Tellez might be your last bastion of like a first baseman you can really hope for a big breakout of. So I like it. I like Rowdy Tellez.
All right. Yeah, I like Tellez too. I honestly haven't even though I always fill that position earlier, and it's just someone that I think someone's always a little more excited than I am in the deeper drafts. But in ones with like regular fab, he's definitely someone you could take a shot on. I think, because if he takes off, he'll give you a pretty strong return on investment. So Rowdy Tellez, I love that pick. Brian, who is your undervalued hitter? And this is where we have a little bit of a fork in the road, because Brian's undervalued hitter is Derek's overvalued hitter.
Okay, so you see my T-shirt. I am not a fanboy, I can assure you that. But Nolan Arenado is going to be my underrated hitter. And Matt, you and I have had conversations about Arenado in the past when we did our third base preview, and I think we were pretty much in lockstep on this. With third base being a position that people are calling pretty scarce, and I can get with that. I think like the more you kind of look into the player pool and experience third base, you can figure out what to do. But Arenado currently going at 81 over the last 3 weeks in the NFBC. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I don't think it's that sure of a thing that Austin Riley going 20 picks ahead of him will have a better season. I know that might be blasphemy to a lot of people, and Austin Riley's a very hot name. But Arenado, I'm all about consistency. And especially in these drafts that we're doing right now and in high-stakes leagues that the NFBC offers, I want somebody who's going to stay on the field, be in the middle of a good lineup. He's not going anywhere. He's getting paid by the Cardinals. Great defensively. And he's going to be on the field. So I love him there. And I am, I think at first in draft season, we were seeing guys like Bregman and Rendon going a little bit more towards his territory. And I'm glad that that's kind of cooled off, because I would not be interested in those guys anywhere near Nolan Arenado. So give me the consistency of Arenado. Again, the guy stays on the field. He's not going to do what he did in Coors. I'm going to get used to more of like I don't think he's going to hit the 250s like he did last year, but I'm, more towards a 265. I think he'd pull off a 270 at Busch, even though it's tough there. And yeah, I think it's a good spot to pick up a consistent third baseman going at 81st overall.
Yeah, I like Arenado too. It's not someone I'm reaching for, but like you said, the third base area seems to be a little weak, and it just seems like the end of, I don't want to say it's as weak as some people call it, a cesspool, which I don't agree with. There's tons of interesting names late. The question marks pile up a little earlier than normal. You have Bregman right after Arenado, and the question marks kind of start there. Bryant, you don't have to really worry about, but Rendon, LeMahieu, Hayes, Moncada, it's just like a waterfall of question marks. So going right to Derek, who we already know, this is his overrated hitter. So yeah, lay it on us. Give us the other viewpoint here. Why would people stay away?
So he's obviously not going to lose playing time. He's only unless he gets hurt. Like, he's extremely safe in terms of playing time, which is very valuable, especially in leagues where you can't make moves. I think one of the hardest things about analyzing players is figuring out when you're going to see actual decline. I think we're seeing it in the underlying numbers with the quality of the contact that Arenado's making, but I think the park works against him too. I mean, look where he's hitting home runs now. It is all pull side power at this point. So I just worry that aside from the average being kind of middling to that 250-ish sort of range, the power could fall into the mid-20s, and the counting stats will still be good because he plays a lot, but he'll fail to make value even where he's going. I think what makes him better than some of the names that Brian mentioned is that he's healthy right now. Bregman's coming off surgery. Rendon's coming off surgery. DJ LeMahieu's coming off surgery. If you guaranteed me today that I was going to get an equal number of plate appearances from Bregman and Rendon, I actually prefer them straight up to Arenado this season. We don't know that right now, so that's kind of an outlandish thing to say. I think skills-wise, I think Chris Bryant's power is actually more sustainable than Arenado's, even though he popped 34 home runs last year. So maybe it's the case where I'm going to be a year too early on bailing on him, and people that stay with Arenado are going to be really happy with him in that pick 65, pick 70 sort of range. But I think we're starting to see some warning signs, even though he's the kind of guy that's going to play for another 5+ years and still play at an everyday sort of clip because of his defense, right? He doesn't strike out a lot. So it's a great floor profile, but I think the ceiling has just fallen considerably from where it was during his time in Colorado. And maybe we're getting duped a little bit by that 34 home run season a year ago.
I'm a floor guy. Give me the floor. I like the floor.
What do you think, Jneyy? Is this boring value, or is this a mistake? Is this just a trap falling into a seemingly safe person with trailing off metrics?
I tend to fall a little bit more on Brian's side just because I also am a give me the floor kind of person for this, especially in this range of picks. I think third base is something that you really are going to have to kind of navigate And getting some of the early ones is very dependent on which draft pick you have. You may not have an option to get, Jose Ramirez and Machado and those guys. So if you don't get them, then where are you left with? I don't want to wait much further than this group. So if I'm looking, I'm not feeling Rendon this year. I'm worried about the injuries. So I'm looking at either Arenado or Bregman, and I'm happy with either one. One thing that I personally like to do is I tend to feel like I see a lot of hitters who struggle, hitters and pitchers really, who struggle in their first year on a new contract, a big contract. And oftentimes, he didn't struggle, I guess, with batting average and a couple other things, but it was mostly fine. But I definitely really like to buy back in on guys in the second year of their new contract. So I think I'm open to it. I don't have a strong feeling about Arenado, but I don't want to wait too much longer than that.
How do we feel? If you drafted him last year, because there was a big bump backwards because of his switch out of Colorado. How does anyone, if you drafted him last year, which really wasn't too far off from where he's being drafted now, maybe around before, were you disappointed? I go to Derek. If you had drafted him last year and he did this, this seemed like a perfectly acceptable season, right?
Yeah, I think you were actually pretty happy with the outcome. I think run production would have been a concern aside from the power drop off, and that hit wasn't as bad as some people would have forecasted. I mean, again, he puts a ton of balls in play, and he never gets a day off. Players like that are hard to find even in that range, because once you get past that, you're either taking on injury risk, skills risk, and eventually you're taking on legit just playing time risk in the form of someone that maybe plays multiple spots.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the last underrated hitter is mine. Is this guy's going late. So I think this is regular mixed league relevant because I think that once the DH is officially here and the other circumstances of this team, Tyrone Taylor of the Brewers. I love this guy. The fans of the team already kind of know about him. If you're not a fan of the team, you may not, unless you're kind of in deeper formats. Again, between the first, besides I get into his skills, the designated hitters coming. Lorenzo Cain's on this team. Christian Yelich's on this team. I think we'll find every day at bats for Tyrone Taylor one way or another. It's someone where I think you throw a dart at the end of your draft. If you're in a shallow format and in DCs and stuff, I certainly think he's worth a shot. He comes in with impressive exit velocity for a hitter as far as max exit velocities in that 76 percentile area, sprint speed 87th percentile. So he kind of has that high BABIP skill. He only batted 247, but if given consistent playing time, I think that he is someone that could get on base a lot more. So 21.8% strikeout rate, not a big deal. 7.4% walk rate. I like it a lot. So just someone that I think that is being overlooked in drafts, because if you just look at like roster resource, you're not necessarily sure how he's going to fit in. But I think when all is said and done with the Brewers, he will find a way to get in there most days, and he'll be plenty worth where you can get him in drafts right now. So starting with Brian, what do you think? Did your podcast partner just punt out someone bad for the audience? Or are you on board?
I know I am on board. My only question, and I think you've talked about Tyrone Taylor. We've talked about him privately too. My question really was only about the playing time, and you've kind of navigated that, worked through that for me. And I think you might be right. I mean, we're obviously going to get the DH in the NL. What I love about Taylor and the reason that I have him in my player pool is the fact that he does everything well. He's got some pop. He's got some speed. He's going to stay, I think, on the field. He's not incapable defensively or anything. And you mentioned some of the age and injury issues that we have on the Brew Crew. So, yeah, I think is the big thing for me. And again, it's why Arenado is somebody that I coveted so much as far as my hitter. I want at bats, and I want to make sure the guy is on the field. So I've just wondered how much they're going to end up playing Tyrone Taylor. The skills are there. As long as he's playing, I definitely want him. I feel like I want to get a little bit more clarity, but I think there's a pathway there that you're kind of painting a picture of there, Matt. So yeah, I am definitely intrigued by Taylor.
I think there's there's a lot of players that'll fit this criteria where everyone isn't in their minds. Everyone just can't see that the DH is definitely coming, and no one knows how certain lineups will shake out. But then once it's official and everyone sees what the lineups are going to be, there's going to be a whole ton of hitters in the National League that all of a sudden will get this big bump because everyone will be like, oh yeah, he will be in the lineup every day. And I don't think there's a platoon issue here because he hits 298 versus lefties, only 220 versus righties, but he had a lot of power versus righties. So I think that'll kind of like stave that off. But what do you think, Derek? You are the Brewers fan here. You have much more of an insight on him than most people watching him every day.
Yeah, I guess even if I were less optimistic than you guys about universal DH, he plays center field. And I think Lorenzo Cain is a guy that needs preventative maintenance at this stage of his career. Yelich is going to get occasional days off because of his back or his knee or whatever's bothering him. So you have two guys already that are not necessarily 100% volume guys. With Cain, it could be multiple IL stints again. It just seems like soft tissue injuries are catching up to him. So I think he could end up being the primary center fielder. I think the issue I might have with Tyrone Taylor, even if there is universal DH, it might be more of a rotation. It might be 3 or 4 starts per week initially, and then more playing time later. And if it's not a DC situation, if it's a regular 12 or 15 team league with a 7-player bench, he might be the kind of player that you like, you reasonably draft late, you hold for a little while, and you can't use him enough early and you have to cut him, and you're going back and bidding on him later. That could easily be the arc. But I like the skills, lots of ways for him to make value. And unless they trade for a legitimately like better everyday center fielder, I think that's where he ends up playing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain rest to these. I don't call them fringe guys. I think he's a little better than that, but yeah, being replaced at any time. But I think they like him. Over 90% in zone contact rate. You got to love that. So Jneyy, what do you think? Is this someone that anyone you have interest in? You keep smiling, so I never know whether you agree or you're like, oh, this player is such a bad idea.
No, I am a big Tyrone Taylor fan. I'm too old to use the word stan. I don't like it. I am a big fan of Tyrone Taylor. And I was laughing because what Derek just described is exactly what I did in the main event last year. I didn't draft him, but I picked him up and I dropped him and I picked him up again and I dropped him. And it was difficult to keep, to have a consistent, I kept thinking like, can I start him this week? What if he plays 3-4 games? I can't do this, but I really do like him. And I don't know if you've noticed, but in the last couple of days, Roster Resource has been updated to include the DH. And they have Tyrone Taylor penciled in as the DH. So for whatever that's worth. Yeah, exactly. We all live and die by Roster Resource, right? So yeah, I mean, if he can get consistent playing time, the fact that he can chip in some steals is great. So I'm hoping that he gets playing time.
All right, we're all on board then.
Can I get an over under? Let's ask the panel. What's an over under for games played for Tyrone Taylor?
Games played. I gotta do plate appearances. I never am good at plate appearances. I'll go 400.
I think that's pretty good. I mean, yeah, I'd say around 130 is a good thing. Maybe 140. I think 130 is. You draft conservatively, so I think if I think he's going to be in the lineup every day, I think that's 130 games. But yeah, I think 400 plate appearances is good. I think he can go over that though.
Yeah, I would agree with those numbers. Cool.
All right, so we already know Derek, his overvalued hitter was Nolan Arenado. We hit that. We're moving over to Jneyy. We're going overrated now, overvalued in fantasy in the NL Central. Who is your overvalued hitter?
I actually had a little bit of trouble with this one, but I ended up settling on Tommy Edmond, and it's mostly because I think that he is a rabbit who's not treated like a rabbit, if that makes sense. A guy who steals with not as much else going on. And what I worry about, he obviously steals, not a question. What I worry about is his lineup position and his playing time. His defense should keep him playing all the time, but his on-base percentages and therefore his OPS are a struggle. And if he doesn't lose some starts in general, I worry that he might get shuffled down to the bottom of the lineup, and that might prevent some of the steals. So I think that I probably will end up, just because of, the way that drafts play out and roster construction, all that, end up drafting him here and there, but I don't feel great about it.
I feel like he definitely is someone who should. I don't know, because he steals bases, therefore he's valuable in Roto, and that's why everyone likes him. I believe he led the National League in doubles. If not, he was right there, like with 41. So that is obviously good in points leagues where stolen bases aren't quite as valuable. So it's funny. It's like you want to say, oh, someone's more valuable in points leagues, and it's not necessarily the case here. Derek, what do you think of Tommy Edmond? Because high in zone contact, hits tons of line drives, not a ton of power there. So I guess that's the whole differentiate. It's funny, if you actually look at all his metrics, he's basically a clone of Miles Straw
I was just about to say that I feel like he should be going with Miles Straw.
But do you think? Well, I guess going right to Derek. Do you think the him playing second base is worth that bump in value?
Yeah, I think with Tommy Edmond, there's a little more raw power there. Straw has a little bit too, and that's probably why people are starting to cling on to him. It's not just the speed. There's evidence that he can hit the ball hard, maybe when it's just middle fastball, right? Like as long as you can damage those pitches, you can hit 8 or 10 home runs. I think I don't like players like Tommy Edmond because I don't like that offensive profile for all the reasons that Jneyy mentioned. But yet when I look at this team, I don't really see how they would take playing time away from him. Edmundo Sosa is more of a threat to Paul DeJong than he is to Edmond. And Edmond can play in the outfield if they have issues in the outfield and they need to move guys around and they want to put both those other guys on the field with him. So I think he's safe despite his flaws. So even though I understand all those concerns, I guess the way I'm looking at Edmond is I'm comfortable chasing him where he goes if I'm power or if I'm speed light at that point in the draft. But I've been wrong about Whit Merrifield for like 4 straight years. So I feel like I'm about to walk down the exact same path with Tommy Edmond this year and next year and the year after that if I don't adjust the way that I'm thinking about this sort of profile. So I'm signing off on him as an overrated player, but it's almost like he's overrated and it doesn't matter because they're going to just keep throwing him out there.
Yeah, I was on the same thing with you with Whit Merrifield. He's not going to continue. It's all built on 900 plate appearances a year. He can't do it. He does it every year. Not 700, whatever. It's a lot. But I just drafted him yesterday. So, he's going to stop being valuable this year. Brian, we were just talking about Tommy Edmond. Brian, you're overvalued hitter. I strongly disagree with, but plenty of people agree with you. So who's your guy? Blasphemous, by the way, wearing that Cardinal shirt.
I thought I was going to get to talk about Tommy Edmond there for a second, but I did just want to say real quick on Tommy Edmond is like, there's just so many things about him that I like. And there's enough about him that I like you guys were talking about. I pretty much come out where you do like the multi-position eligibility, obviously the speed and stuff like that. And I think the way the Cardinals do things and the fact that he is so versatile and good defensively, I do think he stays on the field, but I definitely do understand the risk. So sticking with the Cardinals, overvalued hitter now going in round 3. I'm going to say Tyler O'Neill. I don't know if this is some fan reverse bias because I've watched him play now for a couple of years and I know what the batting profile looks like.
Have you seen his dad? More importantly,
I have. Yeah. Hey, I aspire to look like both of those men, so let's just throw some respect to both of them right there. But as far as O'Neill going in round 3 in high stakes roto drafts, I'm just not a huge fan of it. I mean, so we've had one season from him so far where he's followed through. He hit 286 last year. I don't think any person on earth that knows anything about baseball thinks that he'll come anywhere near that again. And I don't think you're necessarily paying for that either. So I want to acknowledge that. But he's projected by Seymour to hit 251 with a 318 OBP. I think the Steamer projection could happen, but to only see this one time from Tyler O'Neill, for me, and the extreme risk with an over 30% strikeout rate to take him in round 3 and being an outfielder, I'm not really interested in paying that price. I hope he does it again. I would love for him to do it again. Much like talking about Tommy Edmond, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt. Like the cool thing about this team and the Cardinals is you kind of know who's going to play and why. Harrison Bader, same thing. But round 3, too much for me. Early in the offseason, I saw he was going in round 5, and I was like, okay, let's see how this settles in. But yeah, I'm not going to be in on him on round 3. That's just my thoughts on O'Neill.
All right. I did one of my incredibly extensive breakdowns on him. And as a picture, by the way, of his dad standing next to Arnold Schwarzenegger, if anyone wants to check that out. You said anyone in the right mind doesn't think he'll hit that again. And I raised my hand. I don't really think he'll hit that. I have him down for 265. 38 home runs, 17 stolen bases, 88 runs, 98 RBIs. You think that projection is not happening?
No.
I mean, his strikeouts are real, but he kind of leaned into it. He's not trying to shy away. He got incredibly aggressive in zone. All the pitches that are kind of in his wheelhouse, he started to take. So he has this like elite hard contact, elite barrel percentage, elite sprint speed. All are high BABIP skills, which will elevate the batting average naturally, and an improved in zone approach. I think he can live in the high not the high 30s, the high 20s, around the 30% strikeout rate. I think he could survive there. Not for a long time. It's a very athletic driven skill set. It's one of those things like Javier Baez, all of a sudden it'll just go away. Right. But for now, I'm still on board. Jneyy, what are your thoughts? Very controversial player here, but I'm in. Brian is not in.
I have that thing that I know that we all get where I have been in on Tyler O'Neill for the last, 3 years. How long has he been around? 3 years-ish. And I draft him every year and it is disappointment. And I get back in the next year and now he hits and I don't want to pay. Like I was getting him so cheap last year. I don't want to pay this price this year. So I believe in him for starters. I believe in him. Is he, I think sometimes it's easy to say he did it 1 year. We need to see it again. But I think a lot of times you can miss out on some really great seasons doing that. And if you wait long enough till it's been proven over and over again, you're on the other side of someone's aging curve. So I think sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith. I've done that with like a Teoscar last year and that paid off. I think sometimes you just have to kind of go for it and know that it could be a bust. I believe in him, but it feels very risky. It feels very high. So you have to kind of plan around that, I think.
Well, I'm like semi-hypocrite here because I love him. I have 0 shares so far. I've already done several drafts. It's early in the draft. You kind of have to, figure out the way you're going. I mean, there's a lot of different directions you can go. So it's difficult. In the first 3 rounds, it's almost ADP dependent to sometimes end up with certain people. But one thing that stuck with me, Derek, before you want to talk about Tyler O'Neill is his explanation when he's asked. I heard him on this Canadian radio show, and he just said, they let me play every day. And he couldn't function. He couldn't adjust before because, he just couldn't adjust. So he just said playing every day, he could go out there, he could, find out what the flaws were and he fixed them and he felt very, very confident. And I don't know, for some reason that just really resonated with me as well. So again, I have no shares. I'm very confident in him though, but I'm not shying away from it. What say you?
I think he's cut from a Gallo Stantonian cloth in terms of the power where he can get away with a higher K rate than a lot of players, but I also don't make a habit of drafting guys with a 30+% K rate in the top 50 overall. Like it's a silly, I don't live my life by a bunch of like hard and fast rules. I don't think people should play fantasy that way. It's more about what you can get with that pick instead. Mm-hmm. You can have Xander Bogaerts as a toss-up. You get a safer batting average. You give up some steals maybe, but I just feel better about that profile because we've seen it for longer. You can get even just a few picks later, Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso cut his K rate. I think people are finally tweeting and talking about that a lot more. We should be excited about Pete Alonso's reduced K rate. We've seen the ridiculous power from him over a longer period of time. The stupid Mets are going to be better this year, so the counting stats are going to be better. So I might get 15 more home runs from Pete Alonso, and yeah, I'm not going to get the 10 or 15 bags that Tyler O'Neill could provide, but I'm also taking on a lot less profile risk early on. So kind of like all of you guys are saying, like Jneyy, I want to find the next Tyler O'Neill. I don't want to pay max price, even though he has the tools to be a second rounder in the future. That's possible. But to me, it's more likely that with that K rate, the average comes down. With that, we're missing some RBIs, we're missing run production, and it all starts to trickle back. And maybe he's a pick 75 range guy this time next year, or a pick 100 range guy this time next year. That's where I think he's more likely to go, but it all comes back to what I can get instead. I like the alternatives a lot better.
Well said. There's a good reason. I think, honestly, if you're going to live by strict rules, ruling out people with a 30% strikeout rate in the first few rounds is probably a decent one to have. And that was Tyler O'Neill, everybody. My overrated hitter, and no one get mad at me because everyone loves this guy. I love this guy. It's O'Neill Cruz. He is being drafted early based on one batted ball. He hit 119 miles an hour. Everyone's tweeting about it. We know he's amazing. He's a highlight reel hitter. He can hit. He's gonna be a star probably. But he got 3 games in the majors. He smoked one. He smoked a few balls. But I mean, it's basically he's living off of a one Statcast batted ball event. I don't think he's going to be in the Pirates opening day lineup. He may. They have no incentive to put him there. They have 0. They can finish in last with or without the man. The thing also is he's tall. Have you watched him? If you love watching highlights, everyone, this guy is tall. He's going to have this monster strike zone with lots of holes in his very long swing. This guy's going to have some rough patches. And I'm all for taking shots on people. Riley Green's going significantly later. I think he'll be in the Tigers starting lineup. If you want some steals, go draft him maybe, or don't draft rookies at all because it's usually a mistake. But O'Neal Cruz is going rather early, and I like him. He's almost guaranteed to struggle because of the kind of hitter he is. And it's just everyone has this built up thing that they're going to do. He's just basically an extremely, he's an untested Jazz Chisholm. So I guess if you want to pass on him, you can go there. And again, I'm rambling on here. So Jneyy, save me from myself. What do you think from O'Neal Cruz?
I just, as a rule, really almost never draft prospects. So he's pretty much just off the list for me. I mean, everybody has a price, I guess, but I would love to see him do well. I remember being at First Pitch Arizona in 2019 and going to a game where I was sitting behind the dugout where he was, and you could see his head sticking up over the top of the dugout because he was standing down there. But, he seems like he has figured out his size, but, like you said, I don't trust that he'll necessarily be in the lineup. They don't have any reason to bring him up early, but who knows with the CBA, but as it stands right now, they don't have any reason to bring him up right away. So it's just a type of profile that the type of player that I just stay away from.
Brian, what do you think? For the record, on PNC, it's like one of my favorite parks. Actually, no, it's my favorite park. Once he's up, I'm going to drive out there to go see him. He's a really dynamic hitter. We're just talking fantasy here. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, PNC Park, best ballpark in the bigs. I agree with you. O'Neal Cruz going to 215. He's definitely not on my board. I would not draft him. And much like Jneyy, I just don't like to get involved with prospects. And the fact that over the last 3 weeks in the NFBC ADP, he's going right where Brandon Crawford is to look at another shortstop. I mean, this is a veteran who really put things together last year that may get platooned a little wee bit out in San Francisco, but I would much rather have a guy like Brandon Crawford than O'Neal Cruz. And then you have tons of professional hitters going after him as well. I mean, you've got Eugenio Suarez about another round later that could rebound and hit 30 home runs. I'm very intrigued by Kike Hernandez. There's a lot of guys back here that are going to go well beyond where O'Neal Cruz is going. And I'm just not going to get involved going at 215 overall. I definitely get the excitement, but once again, this typically doesn't work out when you take guys like this here in these spots. So I will also be out on O'Neal Cruz.
All right, Derek, your thoughts on O'Neal Cruz before we move into the underrated pitchers?
I mean, could easily spend some time at AAA. Fangraphs had a 30 grade on the hit tool as of last year, so there is definitely something that can be exploited by big league pitching. The gap between even AAA and the big leagues has never been wider than it is right now. So I think this is a great time to fade prospects in general in redraft leagues because it could be just a really tough adjustment phase for so many players seeing things that they simply did not see a year ago in the minors.
All right, and going into that was O'Neal Cruz going into underrated pitchers. We're staying with Derek and the Pirates. Who's your underrated pitcher?
For me, it's David Bednar, and it kind of ties into my overrated pitcher. The Pirates are going to be a bad team, but I think Bednar is clearly their best reliever. I think when you look at where he's going relative to other guys with similar skills, guys that have 30+% K rates, sub 10% walk rates, no home run issues really to speak of, Bednar stands out to me. Like he's one of those last, to me, sort of clear-cut third-tier closers that I actually want. So if I didn't do enough early to get at least one, if not two of my top 7, top 8 closers, he's one of those guys I feel pretty good about penciling in for 20 to 25 saves. There's always room for a little bit more. I think being early in his career, especially, he's not likely to be traded during the season, not as likely to be traded during the season. So you might actually keep the job for a full 6 months. And, who knows, maybe they find a way to win enough close games where he sneaks into the 30 to 35 save range. So just a simple skills play. Similar guys go for a lot more. So if you have to take that chance in that range, I really like Bednar.
Yeah, it's the Chad Cordero rule. If everyone remembers when the Expos first moved to Washington and they were just brutal, Chad Cordero led the league in saves. You don't have to be on a good team to get a lot of saves. They don't score a lot of runs. Therefore, the games they win, they're probably going to need to be in a save situation. Didn't work out for the Diamondbacks last year, which is why they got Mark Melancon, but that's a totally other headache we'll get in another show. Jneyy, what are your thoughts on David Bednar? By the way, is it Bednar? Bednar. I'm saying it wrong.
I always say Bednar, but I don't know.
We'll go with that.
I would rather not, if I can help it. Besides the fact that it's not going to be a good team, and this is going to tie in a little bit to my overrated pitcher, but I worry sometimes about us declaring a closer for a team based on the fact that he is the best pitcher in the bullpen. I don't think that necessarily means he's going to be the closer. So, and I don't always understand I'm not positive of his arbitration situation, but it seems like, from my understanding, that there might be some reason to maybe keep his saves total a little bit lower. I might be wrong on that. So it's great. I mean, I'll do it if I need to. I'll draft him if it really comes to that, but I hope that I don't have to.
Yeah. I like how you opened with
open-ended.
You were just like, what did you say? I'd rather not.
I'd rather not.
A better thing than underrated. I'd rather not. Brian, would you rather not with David Bednar? Although MJ Govia here is saying Bender. How you say his name?
Oh, okay. We'll go with Bender then.
I don't know.
I don't think it's Bender, but yeah, maybe Govia is right. But yeah, the skills I think are good. I'll be honest. I did not know he pitched as well as he did last year. That's awesome. But we all know, obviously, that skills come second after acknowledgement of role when it comes to closers. Now, still though, that's not to say that if you look at some of the guys going ahead of him, well, Camilo Doval, everybody seems to love what he did last year and think that he's going to get saves. I don't know that he's definitely going to be the guy there. And again, we could say this about a lot of these quote unquote closers, but also Craig Kimbrell is going 111. I mean, yeah, a lot of us think that he's going to get traded. What if the White Sox pull some kind of weird move and don't do that? I think Bednar stands a lot higher chance of closing out games than those guys. So just because he's going behind people that don't necessarily have the role, it doesn't mean that he's great necessarily. But the way that I like to do things is kind of irrelevant for me. I guess I'm kind of like Jneyy. I would rather try to invest closer to the top, and I'm not as interested in trying to play this guessing game down here. But I do agree. I'm not as worried about the Pirates being bad. I could definitely see, all you want is like 28 saves or something from the guy. You just want some saves, to get you within the ballpark of where you need to be in the roto standing. So I'm not going to play in that range, but I definitely could see Bednar working out relatively well.
All right, Jneyy, here's your underrated. That was David Bednar. We were talking about everyone. Your underrated pitcher, Jneyy, for the National League Central. One of your Reds. I'm
going to go with Sonny Gray, and by my ADP, I think I've got the last few weeks pulled up here. He's going like 177. Injuries were a problem in 2021, but they were a back injury and a groin injury, so neither of them were arm injuries, which is important to me. And I sort of feel like 2019, everybody has this range of outcomes of their projections. You can go from like your 90% profile to your 10% profile. And I feel like he was at his high end in 2019 and he was at his low end in 2021. And so I'm kind of expecting something in between. His innings per start last year was 5.2, which is real close to that 6 mark. And I think with a little bit better performance, that can be bumped up more into the 6 range. The infield defense in Cincinnati is definitely an issue. I'm hoping that they stick with Jose Barrero at shortstop, and that will help that a little bit. So I just think that he's relatively safe and, that he can give you innings and solid stats and, just kind of be a good backbone in your rotation at that pick.
Yeah, and you're saying right now he's going, at least since the end of December, he's going around 166, but going way up to like pick 99, right around pick 100. There's so many pitchers going like Justin Verlander, Pablo Lopez, Shane Baz, Carlos Rodon, Ranger Suarez, a ton of them that people really like. But as far as innings go, extreme risks, and you have to plan around them, maybe giving you only 100 innings or around there, depending on what goes on. We'll see what the Rays do with Baz. But yeah, I do agree with you as far as like he's a sneaky guy where if healthy, he can give you the innings there. It'll be interesting to see where he leaves because it looks like they're dead set on sending him out of town. Derek, what are your thoughts on Sonny Gray?
Love him. I mean, I go after some of the more risky pitchers in the pick 100 range, and I think doing that when you're talking about a Shane McClanahan or Boz, or it always seems to be a Ray for some reason. But when you go after those guys that carry injury risk, guys coming off Tommy John surgery, I like Verlander this year. I do have some innings concerns. I like Nathan Eovaldi this year. Balancing guys like that out with someone like Sonny Gray, who generally can stay really healthy, and maybe match the performance of someone like Ian Anderson going 60, 70 picks later, I'm definitely in. I think Gray was actually one of the names I started to write down when we were getting ready for this show, and I pivoted to Bednar because of my overrated pitcher. So totally on board with what Jney's selling here.
All right, Brian, what are your thoughts on Sonny Gray before we move on?
Yeah, I can see it as well. I mean, Jneyy, we were talking before the show about how we found this kind of difficult to do. I found that getting an underrated, frankly, under and overrated pitcher in the NL Central was tough for me, just because I guess just the division and some of the ballparks lend themselves to pitching. So it was tough, but I do agree with you here. Yeah, I think we can get some eating of innings out of Gray, which, again, when you're playing a volume game like these draft champions we have going on right now, I think is really valuable. So, yeah, I mean, not a lot to say. I mean, this is a guy like in the middle of his career, not super sexy or anything like that, but he's going to pitch. Again, the injuries weren't really arm related. So, yeah, I can see it with Sonny Gray.
All right, Brian, who's your underrated pitcher for the National League Central?
Well, to get even more boring, I am going with Kyle Hendricks. So, and again, this was really difficult. Like I went through this and I'm like, I guess I'll just say Kyle Hendricks. This isn't me putting a flag in the ground to say that Kyle Hendricks ADP is a crime or anything like that. But he's probably going to pitch. That's kind of where I'm coming from here. He's going 282 overall over the last 3 weeks in the NFBC.
That is kind of a crime. I love Tyler McGill. But he may not even be in the rotation, and he's going right there with Hendricks. That shouldn't be.
That's what I mean. And the one thing you can count on from Hendricks, again, as we've seen year after year after year, is tons of innings. Now, we all, the ticking time bomb of Kyle Hendricks is the whole profile, and he's a ground ball guy, doesn't throw super hard. And now a lot of people probably feel vindicated after last year because the results finally matched what the skills look like. He was a guy that defied that for so many years and was awesome. He had 4.1 Fangraphs WAR back in 2019 and just, constant FIPS and ERAs in the threes, just, really productive guy and a lot of innings. So does he go out there and have another 4.77 ERA this year? I don't think he's going to be that bad, but frankly, for where he's going, if he's going to throw 180 plus innings, which why he wouldn't, I don't know. This isn't a good ball club or anything like that. They're going to let him out there probably. Yeah, I think going in the 280s is a little bit ridiculous for a guy who's going to pitch that much, especially when you see some of the names that people like to dream on with young pitchers going way above him. I'm talking myself even more into this. Yeah, Kyle Hendricks. Give me Kyle Hendricks.
All right, Derek, do you have any love? Do you have anything different? Because I guess I'm keeping us along like I always do. Between you and Jneyy, does anyone have a drastically different viewpoint on Kyle Hendricks where you think he's not a good value?
It's a volume game. Do it. It's a great value right now.
Yeah, he was my backup pick for underrated pitcher. He's going over 200 picks later than he was last year. Mm-hmm. I always just like that kind of fact in general. And in a fab, I kind of like him better in a fab league because at 282, if he stinks again, just drop him.
Mm-hmm. Plus the way that they admitted to changing the baseball so much and the sticky stuff. Finesse pitchers can, like him, could certainly be messed with quite a bit, being thrown off anything that they do on a normal schedule. So you could certainly see that being a big part of it. If you can actually get into whatever the rules are, just make them consistent. Kyle Hendricks will probably bounce back. My underrated pitcher is Adam Wainwright. I can keep this kind of short and sweet. People are off of him because of his age. That's it. I mean, you saw how well he did last year. He is 1 year old. He's 37, if I'm not mistaken.
He's 40. No, he's over 40.
40. Okay, I'm trying to give him more. I'm trying to give him a little more. And he did pitch a little above his head. You're not going to get 200 innings, but I think you knocked that down to 170. If you look at projections, he's Marcus Stroman. That's what you're getting, except you're getting him considerably late. It's nothing spectacular. I mean, we're talking about Kyle Hendricks a second ago, but I think he gives you 107 innings. He's a good ground ball pitcher with a fantastic defense behind him. I think he's getting too much of a senior citizen discount in the opposite way. So yeah, Adam Wainwright, sign me up. I don't think last year's happening again, but I think you're going to get a nice mid-3s ERA, a low whip, 170 innings. Give it to me late. I'll take all the old people. Give them to me all. Anyone disagree with me on old man Wainwright, who I tried to make 3 years younger and somehow he's much older?
He looked so done between 2016 and 2019. I mean, he was running mid-4s ERAs and even a 5 ERA back in 2017. Like it's a great story that he's come back and pitched this level again. I think
Bartolo Colon let him on his unicorn farm and whatever they're drinking there.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't have as much of a counterpoint to how he did it. I just look at what was happening for so long and think, I guess I just don't want to be caught holding the bag if he goes back to being that guy and just eats a bunch of innings at a 4.50 ERA clip again. So I'm out because of past failures, but that's probably a shortcoming on me.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going late enough where you're not giving up anything. This isn't late like, he's going at 200. I mean, this is where Jordan Montgomery, very popular sleeper. Patrick Sandoval, very popular sleeper. They're all kind of sitting here. John Means is going a little later. So, I mean, there's, it's not like you're getting him for free by any means. Jneyy and Brian, any different thoughts here on Wainwright before we move on to overrated?
I don't disagree with anything you just said, but it's terrifying. So it's and when you get into March, it's possible that the guys that you're talking about, those sleepers, are going to get pushed farther up. And if Adam Wainwright's kind of what's left there, I imagine he probably won't get pushed up like the others. So that might make him a good value once you get to March.
Everyone listening and watching, this is why he's underrated. Smart people in here. They all agree with me, and they all admitted they're terrified anyway. That's why he's so cheap. It's hard to do, but maybe, if you waited and you just need a sure thing. If you want something, I don't know how to describe it. He's not a sure thing. If you want a nice, comfortable grandfather type on your bench, just Adam Wainwright. Derek, who's your overrated pitcher? Who's also Jneyy? So you guys can share the stage here after Derek leads us off.
So for me, it's Giovanni Gallegos, and it goes back to something Jneyy was saying before. I think we do have a problem in our community where we tend to just anoint closers when teams aren't actually anointing them. And I know he finally got that opportunity for a prolonged stretch last season. I was rostering him when he wasn't getting saves because I believe in the skills. But I think when you have a guy who might be shaky and he goes in the pick 100 range and you can get the skills I described earlier, even though it's on a worse team in David Bednar 100 picks later, it's the profile that I just don't want to chase right now. The uncertainty that I don't want to chase at that price. So it's as simple as that. He's a great pitcher. I'm just not convinced he's the closer start to finish because in my head, it made more sense for him to be the closer on opening day last year than Alex Reyes. And they went the Reyes route for a long time before finally giving Gallegos that chance. So I get the sense they might be pushing more in the direction of saying, yeah, you're actually our best reliever and we use our best reliever when we need our best reliever, not only as our ninth inning guy. So that's my primary concern with Gallegos, is a guy that literally has almost identical skills to David Bednar.
Kind of what Toronto tried to do with Jordan Romano for most of last year. Jneyy, your thoughts on Gallegos?
Yeah, I mean, basically what DVR said. I think it's a hole in the fantasy analyst market that can be exploited right now, is going against the grain with people who have been anointed a closer. If you are the Cardinals, it is not necessarily in your best interest to make him the closer. He's probably better served to being a fireman. So, and I think part of the analysis on it is, well, they're going to put Hicks and they're going to put Reyes in the rotation. Well, maybe. We don't know that. What if those two guys are still in the bullpen? Would you still say that Gallegos is the closer? I don't know. I mean, going into last year, there was quite a few people that liked Jordan Hicks, including, my tag team partner, Rob DiPietro, was convinced that Jordan Hicks was the closer. So I think it's like a 1 in 3 chance. And Gallegos has a really wide range of picks. At least when I looked at it yesterday, he was like between 74 and 250. So, at 74, I don't really like it. When you get later, okay, maybe. But if I draft him, I'm certainly not counting on the fact that he's going to be the full-time closer.
Yeah, early on this is later in the offseason here while the lockout's still, the mins keep getting pressed on all of these relievers at the top. And yeah, like you said, anyone wonder why I was just randomly laughing? I'm just thinking of someone who was like, maybe likes baseball casually, who's listening, who doesn't know all the terms. And you said he'd be better off being a fireman. And I'm wondering, saying that he's not good. He'd literally be better off being baseball's not your thing. But yeah, I mean, it's tricky with these early closers because he's going at 80. At 380, Jonathan Loaiza's going. If he's not the
Rowan
closer,
Wick.
that's
Rowan Wick is just as likely to be the closer, I think.
So Brian, since you are the Cardinals fan, you look. I can't read you either because Jneyy always looks happy. You always look kind of pissed. So I don't know if
I have
Gallegos. I'm mad.
I have a resting. Well, I won't go there. Resting angry face. But yeah, Gallegos. So I'm totally with you guys. Yeah, Jneyy, what you just said about there being a 1 in 3 chance, I think you nailed it. And here's something else you should be afraid of. So Mike Schilt is now gone, and Ollie Marmol is the new manager. And I don't know if it's just as simple as saying like Schilt didn't agree with sabermetrics or something like that. I don't think it's that easy to say. But I think Ollie Marmol has more. I know that John Mozeliak is, an analytical guy. The guys in the front office are more into analytics. And I think Ollie Marmol is probably going to manage in the way that they want, which leads me to believe the Gallegos is probably going to be more of a setup middle reliever, fireman, if you will, type guy. And then the wild Jordan Hicks or Alex Reyes can be served for, that's how you should do things. You should put the wild reliever that can't get anybody out and walks everybody in the game in the 9th inning when you're up by 3 runs. Gallegos should be coming in the 7th when there's a couple guys on, get 1 2/3 out of them or something. Wildly, great reliever. And maybe they kind of do a platoon, whatever you want to say, type scenario. Maybe he gets 15 saves doing things that way, and you got a whole Tampa Bay Rays situation going, which is kind of a lose for everybody. So for where Gallegos is going, no, I'm not going to pay that price. I think the Cardinals are more interested in operating the bullpen the way it should be operated, which means that Gallegos is probably not going to be saving 25 or 30 games, in my opinion.
All right, so that's Giovanni Gallegos. Brian, who is your overrated pitcher?
So I put Aaron Ashby, and I want to be careful with the terminology here. I know we're saying overrated. I don't think that he is an overrated pitcher. I think that there's some special stuff, obviously, to come from Aaron Ashby, but people seem to be drafting him. And I was just noticing this when we were looking at Kyle Hendricks a few minutes ago, because Ashby is going ahead of him, which I would not do. But, people I think are drafting him in an area where, in my opinion, he's got to be in the rotation. There are just names around him that these guys are going to pitch. And I don't know how much Aaron Ashby is going to pitch. Maybe DVR can help me out with this a little bit, but I know the sky's the limit. But the Brew Crew also, they know what they're doing with their pitchers, which is another reason to dream on him, I think, into the future. But also, I think they're probably going to try to leverage him this year. And I don't think you're going to get necessarily those kind of innings out of him. And they're already got a very stellar rotation. But to just look at some of the names going around him, Aaron Savali, Steven Matz, I would much rather have Matz. Cal Quantrill, I would rather have Alex Cobb. There's just guys going right there around him and even after him that Kyle Hendricks, like I said, I'd rather have Josiah Gray, another younger name. There's just guys going around him that are actually going to pitch that I would rather have. And I just don't know how many innings we're going to get out of Ashby. I think the talent is definitely there, but how much is he actually going to pitch? That's really my worry with Aaron Ashby.
All right. Before we move on, Derek, your quick thoughts on Mr. Ashby, since you are the Brewers representative here.
So I guess the concern I have is similar to Brian's, where the shape of the innings might be pretty frustrating for us. He could be their 6th starter who works out of the bullpen for now, and then when someone gets hurt, then he moves into the rotation, and maybe by May or June, you're getting 5 innings at a time. But prior to that, you're only getting 2 or 3. I think that's a really plausible thing because Eric Lauer actually pitched pretty well. He could actually be the 5th starter. Adrian Hauser's still there to eat innings. I almost think it takes an unexpected trade to open up a spot for Ashby to be a full-time starter, or some sort of confirmation from David Stearns or Craig Counsell that gives us a little more confidence in drafting Ashby where he's going. I guess the devil's advocate argument, though, or the reason why I would have Ashby on some teams, is because that list of names that Brian threw out there, the guys that we know are going to be starters, there are more guys that are like that available in the pick 300 and pick 400 range. So you're giving up a little bit of value in a vacuum to get the chance that Ashby does find his way into the rotation one way or another, and then you're just backfilling with those innings later. You could have that certainty where you take Ashby, or you could just get that certainty a little bit later because of some underpriced starters with more job security.
Yeah, and that's Aaron Ashby, very trendy guy, who exciting player, definitely no doubt going to be valuable going into the future. But like Derek says, it might take some maneuvering to get them there. So if you're in a draft and hold or any kind of a league where there's no roster moves, you could be tricked or stuck with him if things don't go your way. Before I go, well, then we'll lightning round the last one. My overrated pitcher in here is Jack Flaherty, and this is not a shot at Jack Flaherty at his talent. This is 2 years worth of weirdness for me. In 2020, they had the Cardinals, like the Marlins, like dealt with all sorts of weird stuff with the COVID and moving their schedule. And then he was out. He was ready to come back. And then they didn't bring him back immediately. And he was just on this weird schedule. Then last year he gets injured and he's out for a long time. They bring him back and then boom, they're just like full go. Like there was no easing him back. They were just like, here, you're pitching like you've been pitching the entire season. So he's going in this group of pitchers I really like and that just seem a lot safer. So it's just a matter of he's just going a bit early for me. I'd rather he have a great season on someone else's team. It's just a little too early for me. There's so many guys I just like that are just going a little later. Give me Trevor Rogers. Give me someone like that. If I'm waiting past him, or there's plenty of decent options just right around there. So again, not a shot at Jack Flaherty, the talent. It's just too many question marks for how early he's going. Brian, as the Cardinals fan, what are your thoughts on Mr. Jack? Are you full in on him, or are you worried at all?
No, I agree with everything you said. Yeah, same thing. It's not the talent or anything. He could definitely come out, have a nice steady season, maybe go 185 innings and be very good and launch himself back into like third round conversation or something like that. But I'm totally with you. The COVID season was absolutely terrible for him. Lots of weirdness. Then last year, hurts his oblique. He's out for weeks, a month or two, I believe it actually was, and just a lot of weird stuff. So there's just a same thing. I mean, like, luckily, not a lot of arm stuff. Although, actually, now that I'm thinking of it, he did actually have, I think it was a shoulder issue coupled.
And now the lockout where you're not allowed to be with your team's actual doctors. Like, this guy probably needs to be. Although I'm not sure about that. These people are probably like I can't imagine you're just holding off medical. There's got to be some sideways stuff someone's doing. I understand that like getting caught would probably be bad, but I just can't imagine they're just cutting people. You can't have medical treatment. What do you think, Jneyy, on Jack Flaherty?
I kind of think he's appropriately priced. I sort of put him in the range with all these other guys. And my general strategy with these for me, this is a lot of an SP2 kind of, because I like to get early pitching. So I like to spread the risk around with those guys. So I'll probably have, a couple shares of him, a couple shares of Castillo, get a little bit of everybody in there and try to just spread it around. So I'm fine with him where he is. It's risky, but I don't know that it's any riskier than anyone else right there.
I don't know. What do you think, Derek? I mean, the two pitchers right before him are Fried and Barrios. After him, Musgrove, Castillo, Cease, Montas, Trevor Rogers. I'd be so much comfortable with all of them.
I think to me, there's so little that separates him from the pack that I don't want to pay that little bit of an extra tax that he tends to have. I had Flaherty the first full year we got from him, and I've always had this sort of like round up on him sort of mentality in the past. But I do think the health grade has kind of pulled me back to earth. So I totally understand the reservations.
All right, and this last one, since we're running out of time, we'll just have everyone kind of rapid fire. You tell, and I'll try not to jump in like I always do. Derek, who is your favorite late round target from the National League Central? Someone that you could target end game or in late some deep drafts.
Adbert Alzolay is one of those guys. He's got a fastball slider combo that he uses a lot, but he's got two other pitches he throws a little bit. It's a cutter and a changeup. If you could just find one of those to throw a little more often, I think that would go a long way toward giving him some length as a starter. Home runs were the issue for him in 2021, but I think people maybe are losing sight of the fact that his walk rate improved considerably, and that was a major skills flaw for him in the upper levels of the minor leagues as well. We know home run rates can be really fluky from year to year. I know as a guy with some fly ball tendencies, there could be a higher home run rate there than we would like, but I don't think 1.8 homers per nine is his baseline. So decent strikeout ability, improved control, probably an inflated home run rate last year. And I think he's got a good bit of job security in that rotation to begin the year too. So I'm in on Alzolay.
All right, and everyone, if you're interested in Alzolay, you can get him right now all the way at pick 340 in current ADP. Jneyy, who is your favorite late round target from the National League Central?
Mine is what is the term, a wide awake sleeper, I think. I've started to hear his name, all over the place, and it's depressing because I really wanted to get him late. I hope he doesn't rise too much, but I'm in on Yoshi Tsutsugo. Once he was sent to Pittsburgh, and he had been jerked around so much through the start of his career in the U.S. And once he got to Pittsburgh, he was there for what I have here is 43 games, hit 268, 8 homers, 25 RBIs, and 20 runs. He is right now, based on roster resource, projected to hit number 2. He's first base and outfield eligible. If he gets full-time playing time, I think he can be a really solid contributor in 4 categories.
Yeah, I mean, he can right now. His ADP is still 315. His min is like 284, so not too bad for someone like you said, batting second every day. People like to laugh at Brian Reynolds' projections. They're like, he's never going to score. Was it 100 runs like he did last year? You're hitting at the top of a major league lineup. You're going to score some runs. Brian, who is your late rounder? Sticking with the Pirates.
Lots of bucks here. We're going to go with JT Brubaker. I know there were a lot of people that were kind of fans of his last year. There was some concern at the end of the year. He obviously had a shoulder issue and they shut him down for the rest of the year. But I hate to use this kind of analysis, but I sat down and watched this guy a few times, and it's fun to watch him pitch. And he's definitely like a big time competitor. Doesn't want to come out of the game and is a pretty serious dude. So I was a big fan of watching him. But speaking of, what DVR was saying with Alzolay, very similar, actually worse stuff with Brubaker. He had a 2.03 home runs per 9 last year. And again, I think you have to expect that to come down. The strikeout to walks, pretty solid. And hey, the name of the game in this division, this is where you go to get your pitching. This is one of the best pitchers parks in the majors, much like Busch Stadium as well. Both of them very, very good. And Brubaker, if we can get him to come back healthy, he's obviously going to be in that rotation. He's not going anywhere. This is a guy where you're getting him at 465, I believe it is right now. So yeah, I mean, a streaming option that there's very few matchups I wouldn't want him in, maybe in Cincinnati, the occasional in Wrigley or something like that. But yeah, give me JT Brubaker at 465. I'm a fan.
And to close out, I actually almost went with 2 different Pirates here. One going right after Brubaker in that same rotation, Zach Thompson. He was buried in Miami. They have way too many pitchers, but in the Jacob Stallings trade, he made his way to Pittsburgh. So not probably a ton of innings there, but going to 470 everyday ability to pitch there in Pittsburgh. So I like that, but I'm actually going with another Pirate in Anthony Alford. I think this will end up being, as Jneyy called it, a wide awake sleeper. I think that I've heard his name enough. I think by the time the season is kind of rolling around and people totally understand he's going to play every day for the Pirates, his ADP will move up. Right now, you can get him at right around pick 500. He is someone that has never gotten a steady amount of playing time anywhere and never a steady role. The Pirates finally settle him in to play every day at the end of the year. Not a big sample size, but at the end, September, October, 4 home runs and 7 stolen base attempts while hitting around 276. I mean, it's silly to extrapolate anything like that, but he's got pop, he's got speed, and he's going to play every day for the Pirates. Around pick 500 at bats are kind of like a premium, especially if you're in a draft and hold type league, but even in regular formats, if he's going to play every single day in the middle of this Pirates lineup, roster resource has him batting 5th. You got to like that. So yeah, there's not too many people available around 500 that aren't rookies or in a massive platoon. So yeah, Alfred, I like him quite a bit. And that wraps it up. So that is all of the National League Central for overrated, underrated. Thank you for joining us, Jneyy and Derek. Derek, not that you need to really explain, I gave a little intro in the beginning, but if you're going to remind everyone of your greatness and where they can kind of find you and where they can find your work, if you're working on anything new coming into the season.
Yeah, nothing new in the works just yet, but all the podcasts I'm a part of, Rates and Barrels, the Athletic Fantasy Baseball podcast, and the Athletic Baseball Show, a non-fantasy show, all those are starting up for the season already. Schedule ramping up like crazy. I tweet everything at Derek Van Riper. If I get time to write, which isn't as often as I would like it to be, I post those links there. Everything shows up at The Athletic. So, yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Jneyy, let everyone know where they can chase you down.
This year I've had my first writing assignment was in the FTN 5-tool fantasy draft guide, and I wrote something in there about roster construction. So it'd be great if you could check that out. And hopefully this year I'm going to do some writing for Fantrax and maybe a little for Rotoballer. So I hope to put some stuff out this season. Twitter is at Jneyy Butler 830, so you can talk to me there.
Brian, where can everyone try to find you on Twitter, but you have all your tweets protected, so no one can retweet you ever, even when you're promoting this show?
Well, I can lift the veil temporarily, retweet it out, and then just block the tweets again. But yeah, at Brian J. Seymour, as you can see there. Really just, not a lot of content, not a lot of writing, just playing a lot of fantasy baseball. So, I give my takes on there every now and then, and obviously do so here on this podcast. So that's where you can find me.
All right, everybody. You can chase me down at Matt Williams, METTWI77IMS. You can find me over at NBC Sports Edge, at Roto Fanatic, and over here on the Turn 2 podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Twitch. We're kind of going everywhere. I'm going to be going daily as the season gets shorter, little 10, 15-minute episodes every day for you to kind of like preview who you should start, set anything interesting for high stakes leagues and daily formats. So for everyone here, thank you for listening to the Turn 2 podcast. Thank you for watching if you're on live with us. And we will see you next week with the National League West, which will be George Montanez and Vlad Sedler joining us. So that should be a good one as well. See you, everybody.